When it comes to innovation and shaping the future, you don't need all the answers, but you do need space to think differently. We're launching a special 6-part Brave Human Leadership series in collaboration with our strategic partner, the Human Leadership Institute. In this series, we explore what it really takes to lead through change, a challenge more and more leaders are facing every day. At TomorrowZone, we help leaders shaping the future of business and technology to pause, reframe, and reimagine how they move forward so that they can lead with clarity, empathy, and purpose. Are you ready to think differently? Start your breakthrough at tomorrowzone.io. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the TomorrowZone Catalyst Podcast, where we explore the future of leadership, innovation, and transformation. I'm your host, Deborah Reuben, and in this special 6-episode series, we're going to dive into what it really takes to lead in a rapidly changing world. And we're not just talking about leadership buzzwords. We're going to be talking about the Brave Human Leadership approach, a research-backed framework that's built on belonging, resilience, authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy. These are human-centered leadership skills that drive real impact, foster innovation, and help to create those cultures where people and businesses can truly thrive. So I'm really excited to have Jen Croneberger join me for this series. Jen is the founder and chief inspiration officer of the Human Leadership Institute, and she's a leading expert in relational leadership. So together, we're going to explore both the science and the strategy and the stories behind brave leadership and why it's more essential now than ever before. So Jen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Deb. It's always fun to hang out with you and to chat with you and to talk about amazing things like this. So I'm in it.
Awesome. I'm really excited to dive into this series because, you know, in all of the collaborations that we've been doing over the past couple of years, I've really seen the impact that it's making on our clients as we go through the Brave Human Leadership program and really, you know, intentionally focus on the human side of innovation. So I'm excited to really share this with our listeners and dig into your exciting research and all of the things that you have coming up for the future. But before we dive into all of that, what inspired you to create the Brave Leadership model, Jen?
This is a big question, but I will tell you just a little bit of maybe what led me here. You know, I spent many years after I like to call it, I retired from corporate America at the age of 25.
Wow.
Right. Still working though, so don't worry about that. But just decided it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted. And I was searching for what that passion was. I remember when I was younger, my parents always said, look, you can be and do whatever you want. Just make sure you love it. And I remember holding on to that. And I was like, what do I love? So my first love was sports. And I went back to school. I got my master's degree in sports and performance psychology. And I started working with professional athletes. And I found very quickly there was no difference in, you know, who I was as an athlete and who I was in my everyday person, you know, who was driven to build something of her own. And that's what I saw. And then, you know, I saw the correlation with corporate team, leader, culture, all of those dynamics playing a role. And, you know, if you think about it, companies who want their people to perform, those, you know, leaders who might have the important role of that balancing the pat on the back with the kick in the butt, right? There's two different people. Yeah. Which one do you need? Right? But there's an accountability and an empathy that goes along with this, and they can exist at the same time. And that's what I was really interested in trying to figure out.
Yeah, that's a tough challenge, but it is a very worthy cause.
Yeah.
So, so we think about, you know, what's going on in our world today. I mean, we've got change coming at us from all directions. Yep. in our personal lives and in our business lives. And there's a lot of challenges out there for businesses and for teams to perform at their best when there's so much going on. So I'm curious, what are you seeing as some of the biggest leadership gaps these days?
I think that there's a definite gap in the ability to lead from a place of authenticity, a place of vulnerability, and a place of empathy, which obviously are the core of what we teach, right? But I think so often, and what I see working with clients and just out in the world, if you stop and pay attention, I think we are moving at the speed of light. And so often I see leaders who feel like they don't have time to stop and take care of their people. But the truth is, if you push them hard enough, not stopping and taking care of your people is going to cost you way more in the end, both time, effort, and really even the bottom line cost, right? And so what I see as one of the biggest gaps right now is trying to back to balance, right? Which I don't think really exists, but we get close. It is trying to balance people and performance, right? And that led us to, the leadership, the research that we did in leadership, recognizing that this gap is big. Because when we looked at that, how do you do both? Can you do both well was really the question. And it was the lowest percentage of our respondents said yes.
Oh, wow.
And that was only 19%. And so we recognize that there's a big gap there and that we have work to do.
Yeah. Well, so I think that you bring up a really important point. And a lot of times, at least in the work that we're doing, we at TomorrowZone are helping inspire teams to, generate these breakthrough ideas that can shape the future. And often it involves big transformational initiatives. We're transforming processes, customer experience. Sometimes we're even like overhauling the digital platform. And, the human side is often ignored. It's not intentionally dealt with. Sometimes we think it's all about the process design or it's all about the technology, and rarely is that the thing that holds you back from success. It's really about focusing on the people and how they're connecting and interacting and performing together.
Mm-hmm.
So, you did a bunch of research on this. Why is it so important for us to focus on these things as leaders and to focus on this human side of things?
I would say I would start this answer probably this way. What we have seen is that human connection is the foundation of effective leadership. And like you said, we're in this world. We are increasingly driven by technology, by rapid change, by uncertainty even. We have seen that leaders who prioritize this human connection that we're talking about build trust, build and develop resilience, and even a sense of belonging, which are key ingredients to high-performing teams and thriving organizations. That is what we found to be true. And at its core, I think there's these different ways of viewing leadership, but at its core, when it works, leadership is not about authority or control. It's about influence and impact. And influence is deeply personal, right? It happens through relationship, not directive. And when leaders actually cultivate this authentic connection with their teams, amazing things happen, right? They can create an environment where people feel valued, people feel seen, people feel heard. And that develops a sense of what, you hear these words a lot, but what really is psychological safety, which enables innovation, it enables engagement, and it really boosts collaboration at a much higher level. And that human connection piece also drives resilience, which came out in our research. People don't burn out just because of workload. They burn out because they feel isolated, they feel unseen, or even disconnected from a sense of purpose. Leaders who invest in meaningful relationships like that to build those things will actually foster a culture where people actually support one another. They build teams, right? They push through challenges. They stay motivated, even in the face of adversity. So, putting those pieces together, it's critical for us to be focusing on this. That's how we're going to survive.
I'm curious, do you have like an example of how this gap shows up in the business world?
Yeah, I think that, and there's so many examples right now going through my head, just as that. I can think of a client specifically, and I won't name names, but we were working with a client who was dealing with, there was a very pronounced, I'm not going to call it a divide, but you could see it, right? And it was this, upper echelon of director and above kind of level leaders. And I was working with a couple of them that I was really seeing not do this at all. I mean, it was very much like, do you do this, you do that, you do this.
Command and control kind of approach.
Completely. And I sat in sometimes on a couple of their leadership calls, and I would hear them talk about the first thing was, hey, talk to me about your numbers. Not even hey, how you doing? Good morning. It was like, none of that was even there. It was like, we're talking to the wall, really, right? It was like, give me your numbers. And it was mind blowing, to be honest, because to me, part of that is just common courtesy as human beings. Like, hi, how you doing? Like, let's form a rapport at least. Mm-hmm. I might not even like you, and that's okay. But we have to find ways to connect even in those moments. And I saw that, and it was so stark. And I think once we really started to dig into that and figure out why, it wasn't that this person was ill-equipped to do it or they didn't want to do it. They didn't know how. They felt awkward. And so instead of trying to get into that awkward space of being authentic and genuine and real and vulnerable for a second, they just kind of completely, retreated from that and did the exact opposite. And they didn't recognize it until we actually talked through it. And then they, I don't want to be like that. I can't believe that that's how I'm coming across. And I see what you're saying. So it was a moment of expansion, I think, for someone to just stop and pause and take a breath and recognize that we're talking to humans. We can do that.
So what happened? Now I'm like, yeah, suspense. What happened in the end?
So in the end, I think there was an interesting team dynamic that I saw start to shift. They started to have different kinds of conversations. I would see this leader in a team meeting with their, direct reports, and they would show up with this moment of, happy Thursday. How are we doing today? What's going on? Let's go around and just kind of check in. And I was like,
wow.
Whoa. Okay. So, and they all felt it. They all said, they're like, this feels good. And when I feel good, I'm more apt to really do good work. Right. And that's what we started to see, numbers went up. People were kind of, we're in a good space. It's almost like, when you know that people care about you, you're more likely to go through a wall for them, right? If there's a mutual respect and connection. And it was that simple, truthfully.
I think that is that intentional connection of a team, especially as you're mobilizing for a big effort, it's often ignored completely. Whenever, your story reminds me of, whenever I've come in to help companies try to recover from their past failed efforts, especially with technology implementations, because they're so complex, so many pieces.
Yep.
And way too often folks ignore the human side of it.
Yeah.
The thing that is often missing is that intentional connecting the team together.
Right.
So that you can actually build that type of environment that you did with your customer. And it's one of the reasons why, whenever we're asked to come in and help drive a very transformational initiative, I called on you to come in because it's like, yeah, we can do all the things.
Sure.
We can help you change your customer experience. We can reimagine processes. We can bring in new tools and technology. But if we do not affect the culture and help your humans to connect and collaborate, well,
that matters.
None of it matters. Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't bridge, innovation with adoption if you don't deal with the human side. So I want to kind of dig into the research. I know you spent a lot of time and effort on this deep research on this topic, and I'm really curious. First of all, how did that research just shift the way that you think about leadership development as a whole?
So, we spent last year doing this research, and we discovered, I think, through it, and this was the interesting part, actually. We went into this research understanding that we could be proven wrong. Right. So this was a vulnerable moment for us to say, hey, let's find out.
But, that's the scientific method too.
Yeah. We couldn't go in, pushing an agenda. It was, here's what we want to know. Let's figure out the right path. And we discovered through that, I think, that not only are we on the right path, we actually have taken the permission to kind of double down on it. I think, what we're seeing is the most successful leader who's taking care of their people and driving performance. It came out to actually be called the relational leader, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about. And like I mentioned to you earlier, it actually so happens to be the smallest percentage of respondents. It was 19%. And when we saw that, we kind of paused for a moment, and we were talking with the research group, and we said, wow, we have work to do, huh? And she kind of laughed and said, yeah, I mean, this is kind of exciting. We're recognizing that some people get it. Some people are doing it. Some people might even be doing it well, but not enough. And it really starts, I think, with a transformation in actually how we develop leaders, right? Because if we look at how do we get to lead, I think, yes, there's some innate abilities, I think, that we have that naturally, but I think we're taught this. I think we can learn how to lead effectively. And I think this new model, this new way of really understanding how we're developing leaders is intentionally moving from that kind of individual learning to more collective and collaborative growth. If you think about traditional leadership programs, have often been centered on individual coaching, right? On case studies, on technical skill building. However, I think, the insights really have highlighted for us the importance of experiential learning, of storytelling, of peer mentorship. Emotional agility came up, right? And that's the emotional agility in shaping leaders who can navigate complexity with both wisdom and heart.
Ooh, that.
Yeah, that's it, right? And it's because it's shifting a focus from competence to connection in every way. And it's not just about I'm good enough, it's about we, right? And I think that's the gold. That's where we sit right now. That can be a game changer for industries across the globe. I mean, I don't think this is pigeonholed into you can only do it this way. I think there's so many different ways. And I've learned, just in working with you and TomorrowZone, is being able to see how effective you are at getting to those processes and being able to, hey, we can do this more effectively. And imagine what that looks like then when you're adding in, and we can do it more collaboratively. We can do it with more emotional agility. We can do this in a way that lifts everyone to be at their best, which only makes the technology better.
Yeah, there's something that you touched on that I think is so important for this world that we're evolving into. TomorrowZone is a very AI forward company. We've been leveraging AI tools since 2016. So this is just a part of our everyday, and it's just a part of our DNA. It's a tool for curious people.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
if you want to be effective.
Yeah.
But there's so much changing so fast, and there's so much uncertainty and new territory that we need to cover. And I think that emotional agility is really, really important. But you also talked about wisdom and heart. And, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is the challenges we're moving forward. TomorrowZone, I'm always thinking about, like, where are we going? But, multi-generational work environments and fast moving technology. How do you blend the wisdom of the past with the possibilities of the future? And the only way to do that is through effectively connecting humans so that you can collaborate and you can work together to inspire new ideas to shape an even better future. The biggest challenge that I'm seeing as I'm working with teams, it's one thing to recognize the right problem to solve, but it's another thing entirely to understand the environment in which this problem was created and exists and for how long it existed. And a lot of the elements that created that problem have to do with the human side. And so I think that, the focus on like how do we harness that wisdom and not lose the wisdom, because information is everywhere. It's a commodity. You can get content anywhere.
For sure.
Connection.
That's it.
That's the rare golden thing that we're missing. It's connecting with each other, connecting with new ideas, connecting with future possibilities, but then together believing that we can make that future happen. And that's one of the big barriers that even, I'm working with the team right now on let's paint a picture of what our future could look like.
Right.
What's holding them back is believing that they can actually do it.
Yeah. Well, I think, the world or the word possibility has to have an element of belief to it, right? That it is possible. So and I love, it's one of my favorite words actually. And people always like, what's your favorite word? To me, it's possibility. I think the magic there is in what you just said. It's bringing the past along, right? I think not leaving it there saying, oh, we're done with that, because that has built our story up to where we are today. And that all matters. So I think taking, wisdom from where we've been, right, to where we're going is that connection between generations that is imperative to get it right. And I think it also, it builds that idea of belonging, right? It builds that inclusive muscle that we need to recognize that people know when they're being excluded. People don't like to feel left out, and rightly so. Why should we? And I think we can do that better, but it so has to do with that agility that we're talking about.
Yeah. So back to the research, what is one of the most surprising insights that came out of your research that leaders really need to know?
So, for years, and again, I've been around the leadership development space for a long time. And it's focused on skills. It's focused on authority and decision-making, assuming that strong leaders are those with the best knowledge, the clearest vision, or the most confidence, right? That was the assumption, I think, for a long time. But the research actually is showing us something radically different. And this is kind of what perked me up. Leaders who prioritize belonging, vulnerability, and empathy outperform those who focus solely on results and efficiency every day of the week. And while we weren't surprised by that, there was a surprise element, I think, in seeing it in real life. And maybe one of the more unexpected findings in that is that it really is, when it comes down to people actually answering questions for real, not, what they want to say, but how they're really feeling. psychological safety really has been, more than intelligence or experience, the biggest predictor of high performing teams. And again, I wasn't overly surprised because I felt that, but I was surprised to actually see people say it. When leaders create environments where people actually feel safe to speak up, they feel safe to take risks, to bring their whole selves to work, you see innovation and engagement skyrocket. And I think what was surprising about some of these pieces is because many leaders still operate under that assumption that authority and control drive performance, when in reality, it's trust and connection that does. And that was a refreshing surprise for us to see that people actually are recognizing that. So resilience is not about individual toughness. It's about relational strength. And that was a piece, I think, for me that kind of just sealed the deal in why this is so critically important. It's getting away from the individuality of how we show up as leaders, how we learn to be leaders, how we develop leaders, but it was about the strength of your relationships.
I love that. I was just writing it down in my notebook. Resilience isn't about individual toughness, but relational strength.
Yep.
Actually, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, again, some of these moments I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to dig into your research. I know you've been working on your book as well. Can you just mention how that's coming along?
Yeah, it will be out in the next couple of weeks, actually, which is exciting.
Ooh, awesome!
It's been a minute. The process has been really interesting. I sat down to write this book in one frame of mind, and I started it, and COVID happened, and everything that followed into this kind of space of where we are today. And the book totally morphed and transformed into the person it is now. And I'm excited about it because I was able to add in the research. I was able to include some of the things that we've been really focused on, some case studies. I've included in some interviews with former Olympic and pro athletes, really taking this whole perspective of performance and people and bringing it together. And how can we really leverage those pieces that we know are, you flip these and everything goes, right? And that was the focus for the book. So I'm excited.
I'm really looking forward to digging into that.
Awesome.
So we're going to be diving into each of the elements of brave leadership over the course of the next several episodes in this series. But I wanted to just close out this episode with a final question to kick off our journey. What is one thing that leaders could do today to start embracing brave leadership?
This might sound very simplistic, but it is for a reason. It's an intentional thing. Begin a conversation. What do I mean by that? Begin a conversation maybe with one of the people on your team who you don't often talk to or hear from. They could be, maybe they're a strong worker. They get things done. They don't complain or they don't ask questions. They just kind of show up, do their thing, and go home. Begin to build a bridge there. Because often getting these quiet leaders into conversation, and for some, bringing them on board, it means higher engagement, higher outcomes, stronger and more happy culture. And that's a win-win for everyone. So it's really going to those quieter people who aren't the squeaky wheels. They're not the ones who are, demanding all of the attention. They're the ones just getting it done. Start to build conversation there, start to build bridges there, and you're going to see how your team reacts to that.
Wow, that's a really great challenge and something that we can implement right away. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Jen, thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
Today, and I'm looking forward to the next several conversations with you. For our listeners, give some thought. What resonated with you? What's something that you can put into practice based on this conversation? Let's keep the conversation going. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, visit tomorrowzone.io, and you can explore Jen's work at the Human Leadership Institute. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe, share it with a colleague who might benefit from this. Until next time, stay curious and choose to make awesome happen.